This is Ron Rivest is a professor now emeritus at MIT. He is probably best known as the R in the RSA algorithm. That would, as groundbreakingly important as that work was, the first general public key crypto system, revolutionizing the way we think about secure communications and secure computing, that is only a small fraction of the work that Ron has done, and that has actually influenced me and the work I do profoundly throughout it. Ron is very, very frustrating. I'm glad he is emeritus because he takes problems that I'm working on, I've been working on for a while, and then thinks about them for 10 minutes, and then makes us all realize we've been looking at it the wrong way for decades. So I'm extremely grateful that Ron has retired because I will have my ego deflated far less often. Ron has worked on managing trust. He's worked on thinking about how we deal with names in a secure environment. He has made contributions across computer science. He has won the Turing Award, which is computer science's Nobel Prize, in effect. And I am just utterly thrilled that he decided to come to Las Vegas and spend some time here in the voting village. So please join me in warmly welcoming Ron Rivest to the voting village.
Thanks for the introduction. Can you hear me okay? I'll speak up, yeah. My wife calls me Professor Mumbles, and so it's on, yeah. Okay, I'll talk. Hang on. The mic is on. Do what? Doesn't quite work. Hello? There we go. That's better. Yeah, the audio system in this room seems to be a bit flaky, whatever. So, why? Oh, they use a handheld? Okay. Makes me want to break out in song, whatever. Elvis Presley style, right? There we go. That's off.
It's in your pocket.
Thank you. Okay. All right. So this is the first DEF CON I've been to. It's great to see such a crowd interested in elections here, and wonderful to participate. It's my first one, as I said. So I'm sure it won't be the last, but I'll come back again and do it again. But as Matt says, elections are improving, and I feel my talk sort of reproduces a lot of what he said in his talk. Actually, you did a great job covering the landscape, and this talk covers the landscape too. I've got a focus on evidence-based elections and software independence. I'm at MIT, and so we'll let's see do this. All right. So how we vote now, paper ballots, got a nice chart from verified voting. Evidence-based elections and software independence are the two main themes of today. And then the other voting systems, vote by mail. You know, we have to deal with everything, so as was said. Cryptographic voting systems, hybrid voting systems, combination of those to paper and cryptographic. Testing 1, 2, 3, 4. Every testing. Hold it about there. Okay. All right. Remote internet voting, which I'm not a fan of, as you'll see. Okay. November 2, 2020. Who really won? That's contested in the literature, obviously. I mean, the other conference probably has a big session on this. You know, did Biden win? Did Trump win? Whatever. Was the election rigged? Was it stolen? Why do we have, you know, how can we achieve trustworthy elections? So they're fundamental to democracy. Collectively, we have to decide, you know, what the right thing to do next is, who's to be president or whatever. And so elections are terribly important. How do we vote now? Paper ballots mostly. That's not true historically. It was It's true now. The paper ballot came into play in 1893. Excuse me. As I get older, my voice sort of fades away. I hope the microphone will help. The Australian paper ballot came into play. It was printed by the election officials, not by the candidates. It didn't have colors according to who you were voting for. They couldn't see who you were voting for. You mark in private. You fill in the bubbles next to the names. So it's been around for a while. And today, as we see from the talks by Matt and others, we've seen tremendous improvement. So paper ballots are in play almost universally. They're green or paper ballots. I mean, one can argue about whether BMDs should be allowed or not, but so the green includes BMDs and stuff like that. But paper ballots, there's a piece of paper that the voter looks at or should look at and puts into the box. So he casts the ballot using paper. So people sometimes ask me, you're from MIT, MIT Institute of Technology. The T is for technology, right? Why aren't you supporting electronic voting or something like that? And paper. I like simplicity. I like things that are very technically and comprehensible. Very technically simple. So we use scanners to give efficient tabulation to give the initial outcome. I was trying on the plane over here to come up with an analogy for how we use scanners and how audits play into things. And I was persuaded by Deidre and David Jefferson to not use the one I came up with. So I'm not going to present that. But I challenge you to come up with a good one. What's the right analogy for scanners and audits? I think we need a good analogy. All right. So scanners may introduce errors, as we've seen, due to differences in interpretation. Voters may circle the bubbles. They may get interpreted differently according to voter intent rules. There may be additional regulations saying you can't sign the back of your ballot and things like that. Stray marks, configuration, programming errors, various kinds of hacking, and so on too. This is a great conference for that. It's the first time I've ever bought a burner phone is coming to this conference. I figure I should have one, right? If I ever had an excuse to buy a burner phone, this was it. So I don't know that it's needed, but whatever. How should we vote? So we want to look at the security requirements first of all. Well, first maybe say again, reflecting what Matt said earlier, voting is hard and it's complicated. It's really one of the hardest problems in computer science. It's not like online banking. David Jefferson wrote a wonderful piece that's posted on the Verified Voting website about why voting is different than banking. If you think that voting and banking should be very close, look at his article. The main reason is that votes are anonymous. You can't tell how you voted. You shouldn't be able to tell. No one is trusted. No piece of software is trusted. Voters must authenticate themselves. Election must produce evidence the outcome is correct. This is the theme that Philip and others have pushed, but I think is one of the key, very key criteria of elections. And there's many, many things that make it complicated. The voting varies by jurisdiction. There's disabled voters, ranked choice voting. Dispute handling has to be part of the process. Voters shouldn't have to supply the equipment, which speaks to mobile voting maybe. Voting must be fire and forget. You have to have a one-step process and so on too. So lots of reasons that make it complicated. This is an incomplete list. There are lots of reasons why voting is hard and complicated. It's really one of the most challenging problems in computer science. So how about security requirements in particular? So only eligible voters should vote. So poll book security is important. Each eligible voter votes at most once. So you have to worry about voters contributing if you got dual systems, vote by mail and vote in person. Each cast vote is secret, even if the voter wishes otherwise. That's so important. Voters may wish to sell their votes, and so you can't give them a receipt. You can't get a receipt saying how you voted. How was your vote tallied? So you get no receipt. And the final outcome is verifiably correct. So you want to be able to have some process by which is a trustworthy process, trusted by everybody, saying that this is the correct outcome. And finally, there's no trusted parties here. There's all are suspect. The vendors, the voters, the election officials, the candidates, the spouses, other nation states, and so on. Everyone's suspect. So it's a process where everybody's looking at everybody else and trying to come up with the right result. So you can't just say, you know, Joe will check it because Joe's trustworthy. So evidence-based elections. This is a theme which I think is terribly important. Philip and David Wagner made it most clear in their paper. Election systems should not only accurately figure out who won, but should also provide convincing evidence that the winner really won. So they said this in 2012, their Stark and Wagner's paper. So I think the evidence is, for an outcome, is the most important question you can ask about election system. You can say, what is the evidence that so-and-so won? What's the residue? After the election is over, what's the evidence that this candidate won? Is it a collection of paper? Is it electronic form? So that's the most important question. It's not, you know, who was the system LNA tested or something like that. It's you know, what's the evidence? Who has control of the evidence? How do you access the evidence? There's lots of things about the evidence. So cast ballots are the best evidence. So we'd like the evidence to be something that the voter has verified. Collection of voter-verified cast ballots is the best evidence. Each ballot is accurately verified as accurate by the voter who cast it. This is the ground truth. So we have ground truth as the evidence. It's voter verified. That rules out lots and lots of places where there's a mediation of electronic form between the voter and the evidence, the cast ballot record. Right? All these electronic systems don't meet the standard. They're not directly voter verified. The evidence is indirectly at best verified. And the authenticity of the collection has to be assured by a verifiable chain of custody. That's tough to meet in general, but it's part of the requirements as well. If you don't have a verifiable chain of custody, you don't have the evidence you thought you had. So that's one theme. The other theme is software independence, which is maybe a bit earlier and derived from when I was chair of the Security and Privacy Committee at the TGDC with John Wack. And it basically says that, you know, we don't want to depend on software. We don't want you don't want to have to be in the position at the end of the day of saying to a candidate, you lost, the computer said so, you know, trust the computer. You know, that's not acceptable. The losing candidate has to be able to look at the evidence, whatever it is, and say, you know, yeah, I lost, fair and square. Software is not to be trusted. This is the lesson you've heard so many times already today. It can be self-modifying. It can look, when you look at it, it could be, say, you know, that's a perfectly clean piece of software, but for election day, maybe it was different, and maybe it modified itself afterwards to show you the clean software. It can be erasing. You know, we don't have and finally, we don't have any good methods of determining if a voting system is even running the right software. A lot of what was said already was trying to verify that software was good, but even if you had good software, you don't know that software is running on the machine. We spent a lot of time at the TGDC, several meetings, trying to figure out if there's any way at all of telling whether software on the machine is the software you think it was. And we failed, I must say. You know, there's no good way. You have to have dual port memories or something like this, some way of looking at the memory without trusting software that's already on the machine from telling you what's on the memory and so on. There's no good way that you can't tell that the software on the machine is even the right software. So what does it matter if you verify that the software is the right is good software if you don't even know that the software that's running in the machine is good software? Plus, you've got distribution challenges. You've got to get the software to hundreds of thousands of voting sites, or if you're voting by phone, which is even a worse situation. You have to verify that the software that people have downloaded and put on their phone is right. So software is not to be trusted. So we came up with this definition, which says a voting system is software independent if an undetected error in the software cannot cause an undetectable change in the election outcome. So that's the definition of software independent. So I'll read it again. If an undetected error in the software cannot cause an undetectable error, it could be a change in the software, could not cause an undetectable change in the election outcome. So talking about outcomes here, it's talking about detectability. It's not talking about necessarily raising a flag. You might have to look for the evidence that it's been changed, but it's a definition. Then there's strongly software dependent, which is a definition that Philip and who'd you come up with? Somebody else. Was it David Wagner? I forget. Yeah, I think so. Strongly software independent if it's possible to correct any such outcome error. So I think that closes the loop and says, well, if you find it, you can fix it. And so strongly software independent is often what you want. So those two notions, evidence-based elections and software independence, are really key to, I think, what we want to have. Example, paper ballots with hand recount. So paper ballot trail forms the evidence. It has to be maintained. There has to be good custody of that paper trail. And the hand recount gives you the software independence, so you can actually do a full hand recount. That's the simplest form of a risk-limiting audit, and get the right tally up. So here's where I digress. I think maybe I digress from David Jefferson and Susan Greenhall, saying that software systems, in fact, should be open source. Voting systems should be open source. Now, maybe some of the speakers will agree with me on this, but I think it's one of the points where we fail miserably as a country in getting our voting system software examined. If it's not open source, what hope do you have of looking at it? So I'd be happy if all voting system software were made public. I'd like it to be open source, disclosed source. And the kerfuffle that we've seen recently about Coffee County and so on to stealing the voting system software actually means little. I mean, the software is not the evidence. The evidence is the paper trail, right? So I would argue that we're arguing the wrong point here. We don't really care, or we maybe care somewhat. I mean, there are points you can argue. It's debatable, and maybe this is a good point for questions later on. But it's not the software that's so important. It's the ballots. It's the evidence trail that's really the important thing for the outcome. So the cast ballots are the evidence, not the software. And so the software could in fact be written by an adversary even, or a foreign country, or one of the candidates. So anybody could provide the software. The software provides an initial tabulation only. And it may have bugs, it may have malicious code, there may be other problems with it, but it's not the thing that matters so much as getting the outcome right, and that's what we really want to do, is get the outcome right. I love this cartoon. So it's an electronic voting machine, and this pollster is asking this couple saying, and who do you hope you voted for? So it could have told them one thing on the screen and recorded another, right? I mean, the evidence is not there. So I'll refer often to the NASM report. There's a report, the National Academy of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine, that came out in 2018. And it's online. I guess full disclosure, I was part of the committee that formed this report, but it's talking about securing the vote. Let you finish your picture. Good, all right, there we go. It's online, free PDF. So it said, use voter verifiable paper ballots by 2020. Well, we haven't quite gotten everywhere, but we've gotten a large way there. 2020, a lot of the ballots were paper, in fact, and we're going to see more of them coming up in 2026. Audit election outcomes. So that's another recommendation. Per voter elects to say, eat your breakfast, floss your teeth, audit your elections. I think it's a wonderful quote. And then Philip had this definition of risk-limiting audits, which he's going to talk about at more length coming up. So a risk-limiting audit uses manual interpretation. So there's a hand-eye corporation. There's no mediation by software or a machine. A person looks at the cast paper ballots, at the evidence, to verify with high probability the reported election outcome. Or more precisely to say, if the election outcome was wrong, then what's the chance of accepting the outcome? And I think I have a slide that gives that. So the Washington Post had an article about this saying we should be using auditing everywhere. I saw on the plane, and not beforehand, the wonderful report by David Jefferson and Susan Greenhall talking about how we talk a lot about audits, but we don't actually do effective audits very often. I think that's right, and it's a great report. So the Free Speech for the People website, the report is there. So you print the ballots, the voter verifies his vote, he marks the ballot, he verifies his vote, he casts the vote, drops the ballot in the paper, in the ballot box. You use the optical scanners to give an initial reported outcome, and then, critically important, before the outcome is certified, we have to do a statistical audit of the cast paper ballots. So the outcome that's the real check. And again, I challenge you to find a metaphor, a storyline that goes with this process that's different than the one I had, which didn't pass muster. All right, so the auditing of paper ballots. The audits are about sampling the cast paper ballots at random. That's important that it be random, that you can't just say, the seed is 3 ahead of time in literature and then legislation. Figuring out what the evidence, the sampled ballots say about the reported election results. Use a risk-limiting audit, and the point of a risk-limiting audit is one that it's terribly efficient. And that's not often spoken about, but the risk-limiting audit looks at a small fraction of the ballots that are cast and says, yeah, the outcome is okay. Or maybe if the election's close, you look at more ballots, and eventually it might escalate to a full hand count. But the 3-over margin is a good rule of thumb for the ballot comparison audit. So it's a 200% speed up sometimes compared to a full hand recount. So audit can be very fast. We have 3 auditing paradigms. The ballot comparison audit, which is the most efficient, compares each ballot to an electronic record of what the scanner said. The ballot polling audits, which don't have that correspondence available, and the batch comparison audits, which look at batches at a time, and that's the least efficient. Only recently that those have become popular, and I don't know why. I tend to be a fan of the first 2, just for efficiency reasons. There's other things like image-based audits. People say, take an image of all the ballots and compare, have people look at them, but I don't think that's acceptable, right? I mean, you're not looking at the evidence, you're looking at pictures of the evidence, alleged pictures of the evidence, which were made by scanners and machines which are just as unreliable as the original scanners and machines you might have had. So I don't think it might make people feel good, but it's not really adding anything. So what questions is the RLA asking? question is, what's the current risk? What's the probability that if the reported winner is incorrect, the audit would accept it if the audit stopped now? And you keep sampling expanded looks until the risk is below the limit, so 5%, say. The RLA does not prove correctness of the tally, and I think Philip and I have a paper on this related to national popular vote, which if you're going to audit, would have to audit the tallies in the various states. So the RLA does not prove the correctness of the tally. It proves the correctness of the outcome for the jurisdiction that's being audited. So who is the audit for? It's really for all stakeholders. The winner, of course, is interested in the audit to get a mandate. The losing candidates, to convince them that they lost fair and square. At least you hope that losers are polite and look at the evidence and are convinced and say, yeah, I concede. Election officials, of course, are interested in audits to help them provide accurate and efficiently verified results to say, yeah, we did what we were supposed to do. And the public, of course, to ease doubts about a rigged election. So the audit's for everybody. There's a technical question as to how you audit other outcome rules. There's other social choice functions besides the plurality, which was what we're used to in this country. But you might have, ranked choice voting, where voters can say, I prefer candidate A to candidate C, and then candidate D, and then candidate B, and so on too. And we can have other rules that map collections of such ballots to outcomes. And there's lots and lots of, there's hundreds of, if not thousands of voting schemes that vary. You have weights for votes and so on too. An example that you may have heard of is instant runoff voting, where voters vote preferences. That's used in some places. There's methods that exist for all other voting methods, like Bayesian audits, for example, which is one of the techniques that's available there. IRV has recently been handled by frequentist means by Philip and Vanessa, and I think there's somebody else, right? Philip and Vanessa, and maybe. Oh, Michelle, yes. There's quite a yeah. Yes. So the sphere is gradually expanding of things we can handle. IRV is one of the earliest. So there's Bayesian. I'm a fan of Bayesian methods. I like Bayesian methods for auditing, which is a totally different take on these things. So you might have hybrid audits where only some ballots have cast vote records, other complex voting schemes. There's a variety of things. Voting can get very complicated. More details on the Bayesian approach, see a paper that I filed in archive, but there's lots and lots of variations there. So I don't think we need it for practice for this country mostly, but it's good to know. It's good research. So now applications. So mail-in voting is one, and mail-in voting we have a couple of relaxations of the scheme. The basic cast your vote in paper scheme, but it's pretty much the same. I guess you trust the mail system to bring your ballot to be cast, or you maybe put it in a drop-off box if we have a drop-off box variant. You can also sell your vote. You can do your ballot around the kitchen table. The ballots are complicated in the U.S., so mail-in voting it's very popular here in California, right? Or California, right? It's not here, California. And verifiable voting. That was a scheme which it's still of interest, but it's heavy duty cryptographically. It's complicated. I mean, Germany has passed a rule saying, you can't have a voting system which has cryptography in it at all. It's too complicated. The average person does not understand that. And I think that there's validity to that viewpoint. You need to be careful about invoking, just things you can do doesn't mean you should be doing them, or you should try to foist them on the public at large. So I tend to be skeptical of E2EV, while I nonetheless think this is an interesting research area. What can you do? Can you actually make a voting system that captures all the requirements? The evidence is here is electronics with an end-to-end voting system. So there's a public bulletin board where everything is posted, write once only. The encrypted votes are posted on the public bulletin board, and you can verify things. Different pieces are verified by different parties. So it provides end-to-end integrity. Votes are cast as intended. So a voter needs to verify that what he's intending, even though his vote is encrypted, and he can't get a receipt, so he can't decrypt the ballot, he knows that the encryption of his ballot is correct. And that is a very subtle point, and one which I'm not sure we can handle smoothly yet. But Josh Benlow has a nice protocol for that. Then there's the collected as cast. So cast as intended, collected as cast is the next step. So can the voter verify that he or she's got a ballot in the collection? And so there's protocols for that. And then counted as collected, that requires a third thing. That may be verifiable by anyone, maybe using homomorphic encryption or something, so that the product of two ciphertexts gives you the sum of the values inside and so on too. It can be a bit cumbersome, but it works. So you can get verification capabilities in the ways that you see here, but it's complicated, right? But it's nonetheless been used in real elections. Election Guard Josh Benlow is pushing the Election Guard suite of software. Free and Fair, the Joe Canary is implementing some of this. Wisconsin, California, Idaho, Utah, Maryland have had some test elections with these. So it's technology which I think is slowly getting up to speed and seems to work. So there's hybrid voting, paper and end-to-end verifiability. So the voter fills out a paper document, and there's also an end-to-end verifiability piece. So this hybrid thing has both things, and you can audit either way. Presumably the audit will give the same result either way. So you can audit the paper ballots. That's what we did in Tacoma Park. The Tacoma Park election officials said, sure, you can do this scheme, scan integrity, whatever. As long as there's paper ballots we can look at the end. As long as there's an evidence trail, a paper evidence trail that we can look at, we can forget all the cryptography. But in addition to all that, you could do the cryptography. So. And finally, there's internet voting. And I'll close with this probably, which I tend not to be a fan of. Mobile phone voting, which is the same pretty much, because the evidence that's being collected is electronic and it's not accessible. So the recommendation in the NASM report said no internet voting. There's a fellow by the name of Bradley Tusk that's been pushing for internet voting. He's been having a study group at Berkeley. It's a couple of years ago, put out a report studying, saying we need standards for internet voting. You can't have interoperability without standards, and so we need it. But the working group concluded that it could not issue such standards, stating that the current cybersecurity environment and state of technology make it infeasible for the working group to draft responsible standards to support the use of internet-based ballot return in U.S. public elections at this time, which I think is the right election. We're not there yet. So it'd be nice to be able to vote on your phone. It'd be nice to be able to vote on your internet. I just don't know how to make that work in any sensible way. The internet is too dangerous a place. It's like coming to DEF CON, right? Whatever, I don't know. I bought a burner phone I told you this for the first time. I came here. All right. So finally, conclusions. So we can make elections much more secure still with post-election audits, which I think need to be more widely used, well used, and maybe some cryptography, maybe not. If we go the end-to-end vote verifiability route, we'll probably use a lot more cryptography. These methods, these end-to-end verifiable voting methods look viable and maybe desirable long-term, but that's a ways off yet, I think. The hybrid methods with paper plus end-to-end verifiability look promising, and so I encourage people to explore those. And we're not ready yet for internet voting or mobile voting, aka mobile voting. It's at best years away. I think that's going to be really, really hard. So evidence-based elections and software dependence, I think, are the way to go. I think evidence-based elections maybe hold a card up for being the right way to think about things, but both of these are very, very useful. They're the right way to think about elections as we go forward. So thank you for your attention, and thanks to Verified Voting for that chart. Be happy to take questions. Yes. There's a
Great talk. So in your first or second slide where you said these are not to be trusted, you had voters and spouses and candidates. You didn't include the auditors in there. I wonder if we also need to have a high trust audit process, because that seems to be a recursive problem that we need to trust the auditors, otherwise we run into the same problem.
Yeah, interesting question. Yeah, so there's lots of ways these definitions could be expanded, and this presentation could be expanded. I think auditors, you're asking an interesting question there. I think in many cases, the people participating are the auditors, so the voter is the auditor for, did he mark the right, did he fill the right circle? The voter is again the auditor for, is his ballot, cast on at least end-to-end verifiable thing. And then everybody can be the auditor there. So to some extent, the list of people that I gave may subsume the auditors, at least in some cases. It may include all the auditors. Yeah.
Thanks. There are ways to automate some of the labor-intensive parts of risk-limiting audits, including the retrieval of the particular ballots that you're supposed to inspect. It's possible to use untrusted technology to retrieve the ballots for audit in a way that failures of that untrusted technology, all they can do is cause the sample size to get bigger. They can't cause you to erroneously bless a wrong outcome. So there are places to save some labor.
Yeah, it's possible I misunderstood your question a bit too. I think Philip maybe was answering it better. Was the question of are you trusting the auditors or not? Yeah. Other questions in the back there? Maybe I can manage with this. It's over there. It's over there.
Yeah, right here. I'm sorry, there was.
So part of the conversation is about voter verified auditing. A lot of the conspiracy theories from the last presidential election were about non-voters. How do we prove that a ballot wasn't cast? So if a bunch of ballots showed up for a candidate.
So this kind of great question. Yeah, this kind of election does not, this kind of presentation does not deal with people who were suppressed their voting. So if they didn't vote because the internet was busy, or they didn't vote because there were too few election centers involved, or they were too far away, or something like that. So none of this, you're right in bringing that up, but none of what I've said today deals with that. And there's also other issues like, just advertising. How does advertising affect whether people will go to vote or not? Oh, don't bother to vote. It's a one election, So those are real questions. I think we need to distinguish in a formal way the process of voting from these other things, which are sort of peripheral. maybe. I mean, they're real. So, yeah.
Thank you, Ron, for all your work. One question, I was looking at that map we had from verified voting, and it shows very positive green, but it combines hand-marked ballots with ballot marking device ballots. And I don't know how much people have realized, but when you have ballot marking devices that add a QR code or a barcode to the bottom, they're not reading the marks on the ballot, they're reading the barcode, which makes me think we go back to, these are DREs again. We've kind of gone full circle in 20 years.
I'm not as happy as with this chart as I might be because it's this chart here.
Yeah.
So it does mix together VMDs and paper ballots, for example, and they shouldn't be.
Right.
Alike.
So I think it gives us the impression, oh, we're all paper ballots, but there's
Well, the evidence trail is paper, but the process of verifying that it's is not there. Yeah, the process of verifying that just it's what you intended to vote. Yeah.
yeah. So
Good point. Good point. I can't.
Okay.
I can't disagree with that.
Hey, on one hand, I agree with you, and I think that electronic things are scary and untrustworthy. But on the other hand, especially when it comes to elections, I'm really impressed with how much I can doubt and have distrust in people. And I would just like to hear you talk. It seems like you are assuming that if there are people involved, that's a much higher weight of security, and I feel like that's not even true. Like I feel like if I need to trust some election people, some authorities, and they'll tell me that they've done an audit, they'll show me the evidence on it, but I'm just sitting here in my room. All I've done is I've gone to a voting booth and put something in there. It seems like the amount of security that I get from those people telling me that they've run an audit is maybe even less than I would get if I did this electronic verification thing, even if that electronic verification was done over the internet.
So the confidence that the public has, and the people in this room are atypical, of course, because you're interested in voting and you're technical and so on. So that's not what the population at large will want to ask. So I think you're asking the right question, and there needs to be a public debate about which is better, which works gives you more confidence in the end, and if it comes out to be that cryptography is the right tool to use in the end, I'm okay with that. I'd just be surprised. It'll just surprise me if that turns out to be the answer, though, for the public at large, and that's just speculation. And over the decades, this debate will unfold and have maybe different kinds of outcomes over the time. So, yeah. So. Okay. Yep. Okay. Wait.
They usually go hang out for